Wyoming Territory, summer of 1878, the sun had not yet crested the hills when Aderyn Ashford heard her father strike a deal for her life over a pen of goats. She stood just outside the barn, her hands wrapped around a bucket of water, her boots dusted from morning chores. The wind carried the low voices of men, her father's deep and gravelly, and another man's sharp and eager. She stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. "She's of age, strong, knows her way around a homestead," her father said. "You give me 30 goats and 2 good mules and she's yours to wed." Aderyn's chest turned to ice. She dropped the bucket. Water spilled across the dirt, soaking into the dry earth as the bucket rolled toward the barn. Inside, silence fell, then footsteps. Her father appeared in the doorway. "You were not supposed to hear that." "You're trading me like I'm a sack of flour," she said, voice shaking. "You think I have other options. You know how hard last winter hit us. You want your brothers to starve. They already left, Pa. They left because you're not the man you used to be." His jaw twitched. "You will marry Lee Granger. It's done." She backed away, heart pounding. "Not if I run, and go where? Who would take you in? You think anyone's waiting out there to save you?" She did not answer. She turned and ran. By noon the next day she was gone. Aderyn rode for hours, heading where the land opened wide and the wind whispered through tall grass. She did not know where she was going, only that it was away. Her mare was tired, her canteen nearly empty. The hills rolled on, the sky stretched endless. She crossed into Cheyenne lands by accident. There were no fences, no signs. Just a ridge she crested and a group of riders below 4 men on horseback, all watching her. She slowed her horse. Every instinct told her not to run. One of them rode forward, tall and calm, his black hair loose over his shoulders, a hawk feather tied at the end. He held up a hand in peace. "You are far from home," he said in careful English. "I cannot go back," Aderyn said. He studied her, eyes dark and steady. "Then come down, we will talk." She dismounted slowly. Dust rose around her boots. "My name is Aderyn Ashford." "I am Hakan Palecloud," he said. The other riders stayed back. Hakan stepped closer. "You are running from someone, my father. He tried to sell me for livestock." A flicker of something moved through his expression, surprise, then anger. "You are not livestock." "No," she said. "But to him I might as well be." He nodded once. "You are safe here." Her legs nearly buckled from relief. That evening the Cheyenne camp settled beneath the orange-pink sky. Children's laughter echoed through the trees, and the smell of roast rabbit filled the air. Aderyn sat near the fire, a blanket around her shoulders, the ache of the ride still in her bones. Hakan returned from scouting with the other men. He moved with quiet strength, each step deliberate. He offered her a wooden bowl of meat and broth. She looked up at him. "Thank you. You are not the first woman to seek safety, but most do not come this far on their own." "I did not know where else to go. You rode until the land told you to stop," he said. "That is not nothing." She smiled for the first time in days. Across the fire, 2 young children chased each other, their laughter rising. A girl with long braids and a boy a little younger. "My sister's children," Hakan said. "Their mother died last winter. Their father was killed years before. I keep them now." "Do they know?" He nodded. "Their hearts know. I do not need to tell them again." Aderyn watched him as he knelt beside the children, steadying the little boy's balance with one hand. The gesture was so natural, so gentle, it caught her breath. He looked back at her. "You can stay. You do not have to decide yet, but no one here will trade you, no one will force you." "Why are you helping me?" "Because someone should have stopped your father," he said simply, "and I was close enough to do it." The next morning, Hakan rode out alone. Aderyn knew where he had gone before he returned. He walked into the camp leading 2 mules and 30 goats. Gasps followed him. Children pointed. Elders gathered. Aderyn stood frozen as he approached. "Your father tried to make a trade," Hakan said, voice calm and low. "I made him one instead." "You went back there." "I told him if he gave up the animals and left you alone, I would not burn his barn to the ground." "Hakan," he agreed, "he will not come for you again." She stared at him, stunned. "He gave up the deal." "He gave up before I finished my sentence." "You," her voice broke. "You did that for me." You are not his to trade. She stepped toward him, eyes wide. Why do you care what happens to me? He looked at her for a long moment. Because I see you. Before she could speak, the children ran up to him, tugging at his hands, laughing. He turned, kneeling to speak to them, but his eyes flicked back to Aderyn. And in that look, she felt something shift inside her, something warm, steady, and real. She had crossed a border she never meant to. But somewhere between the wind and firelight, she had found where she belonged. The wind shifted days later, carrying the scent of rain through the cottonwoods. Aderyn stood beside the small stream that curved past the edge of the camp, bent over a basket of soaked linens. Her sleeves were rolled past her elbows, and her skirt was damp at the hem. Across the water, a bird called out, shrill and piercing, then went quiet. She wrung out a cloth and spread it on a flat stone. Her hands moved without thought, but her eyes kept drifting toward the trees, toward where Hakan had disappeared earlier with his bow and quiver. He hadn't said how long he'd be gone. He rarely did. A soft voice reached her. He hunts for the council and for you. Aderyn turned. A woman stood a few paces away, her long braids streaked with silver. Her face was lined, not from bitterness but from years spent watching, waiting, holding things together. She carried a woven pouch and a half-finished net. I'm Mayani, the woman said. Hakan's aunt. I raised him and his sister after the soldiers came. Aderyn dried her hands on her skirt. I didn't know. We don't speak of it often. It's not forgotten, but it's old sorrow now. Mayani studied her. You carry your own kind. Aderyn hesitated, then gave a small nod. I saw you watching for him, Mayani said, eyes kind but sharp. He watches for you too when you're not looking. I don't want to be a burden. You're not, Mayani said, but you will have to choose what you are. Aderyn looked down at her raw hands, her reflection broken in the water. I don't know how to belong. You don't have to know today, Mayani said, but you'll need to learn what you stand on and what you'll defend when the time comes. That evening, Hakan returned with 2 deer lashed across his horse. Blood streaked his arms, dried along the cuffs of his shirt. He nodded to the men who came to help carry the meat, then caught Aderyn's gaze. You've been near the stream, he said, stepping close. She nodded. It's quiet there. Too quiet sometimes, he said. Tracks near the far bank, not ours, she straightened. Someone's been watching, maybe. Maybe just passing through, but I'll keep watch tonight. She picked at a thread on her sleeve. Will you be near? I'll be between the trees, not far, he said. There's a ridge where the moonlight falls clear. I'll see anyone before they see us. She drew a breath, then nodded. I'll leave the lamp lit inside the lodge if you need warmth. He paused, then his voice grew softer. I might come before dawn, when the night's done watching me. She didn't speak, only held his eyes a moment longer than she dared. The next morning, she woke with the sense that someone had sat beside her and left before the sun. The blanket had been drawn higher over her shoulders and the fire had fresh tinder. She didn't ask, and he didn't say. Later, the children followed her to the berry grove beyond the camp, baskets swinging from their arms. The boy, Wessa, was eager and wild, darting toward every bramble. The girl, Toma, moved more carefully, watching Aderyn's fingers as she plucked only the ripe ones, leaving the red ones to darken. You pick like you've done this before, Toma said. Once, Aderyn said. When I was small, my mother took me to a field past the Willow Creek. She said the sweetest ones always hide under the leaves. Toma reached beneath a branch and grinned. She was right. Aderyn felt her throat tighten. She died the winter I turned 8. I remember when my mother died, Toma said. I woke up and everything had changed. Even my brother's voice was different. Aderyn crouched beside her. It's a strange kind of quiet, isn't it? Toma nodded. But Hakan built us a fire. He didn't say anything. Just kept bringing wood. Every time it burned low, he was there again. As they walked back, the sun high now, Wessa tugged at Aderyn's hand. Will you stay when the snow comes? She looked down at him, his face sticky with juice. If I'm welcome. You are, he said. Hakan wouldn't have brought you if you weren't. That night, Hakan joined her by the small fire behind the lodge, where the smoke blew west and the stars came clear. He didn't speak at first. He handed her a carved piece of wood smoothed at the edges. "A whistle," he said. "If you ever need to call me." She ran her fingers along the grain. "You made this," he nodded. "From the tree north of the stream, the one with roots that rise like steps." "I saw that tree," she said. "It looked like it was lifting itself out of the earth." "Some things are meant to move," he said. "Even if they were planted deep." She looked up. "You think I was meant to move? I think you were meant to choose." His voice was quiet, unhurried, not be forced. "Not bartered." She turned the whistle in her hands, its weight small but solid. "And what if I choose wrong?" "Then you'll choose again," he said. "But I don't believe you will." She didn't answer. But when he stood to go, she touched his arm just once at the place just above the wrist. He didn't move away, and when he looked down at her, it wasn't with pity or caution but something softer, something growing. Like roots breaking through stone, by late August, the grass along the river had turned brittle and yellow, the wind carrying dust more than scent. Aderyn worked beside Mayani at the drying racks, laying out strips of meat while the sun beat down on her back. Her skin had darkened, her hands rougher now, her movements sure. The children ran somewhere near the elder's lodge, their voices rising and falling in the warm air. Mayani handed her another length of venison. "You've taken to the work." "I like knowing what my hands are worth," Aderyn said, eyes on the rack. "Back home, I was only ever told what I owed." Mayani didn't answer right away. "Hakan told the council you should stay." No one objected, but they still could if I make missteps. "People here watch action more than words," Mayani said. "You've shared the burden, you've never asked for more than your share, that's what they see." Aderyn straightened, brushing her palms together. "I want to repay what's been given." "Then stay steady," Mayani said. "Don't run again, not even from yourself." That night, Aderyn walked up the ridge alone. She climbed past the creek where hollow bird calls echoed and followed the slope until the trees thinned and the stars came brighter. She found Hakan sitting on a flat boulder, one knee raised, bow resting across his lap. "I thought you might be here," she said, stepping into the moonlight. He didn't turn. "The sky's clearer from here." She sat beside him, leaving space between them. "Tell me something you haven't said before." He tilted his head slightly. "When I was 16, I rode into Fort Laramie to trade. I saw a boy there, younger than me, being whipped for stealing bread. I gave the soldier my knife, said it was mine. You took the blame. I could afford a scar. That boy couldn't have survived the jail." She looked at him, the deep quiet in his face. "You don't speak of pain like it belongs to you." "I don't carry it the same way others do, not anymore." "Then how do you carry it?" "I keep moving, keep building." "Pain doesn't rot if it has a place to go." She glanced at the bow in his lap. "You hunt, but I've never seen you take more than needed. We're not owed more than we can use." She thought of her father then, how he'd filled their cellar with things they couldn't eat before the frost turned them. "That kind of hunger doesn't feed anyone." "No," Hakan said. "It devours." They sat together in the hush between wind and branch, the air cool now, cicadas fading. Then his hand brushed hers, not with intent but with quiet presence. She didn't move away. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "If I stay, I want to do more than just survive." He looked at her then, not with surprise but with something deeper recognition. "You already are," he said. She turned her palm up, letting their fingers find each other. "I don't want to wonder anymore," she said. "Not about who I am. Or who sees me." "You don't have to," Hakan said. Their hands stayed joined as the moon traced its arc across the trees. When they rose to walk back down the slope, the path felt different beneath her feet. Not softer but solid, as if it knew she wasn't passing through anymore. She belonged to it now, and to the man walking beside her. Rain came thin and steady across the plains, the kind that soaked in rather than ran off, turning the air cool and fragrant. Aderyn stood beneath the eaves of the lodge, watching the mist thread through the distant cottonwoods. The children were inside with Mayani, hushed and occupied with something that didn't call for her help. She hadn't been asked to leave, but she knew when a moment wasn't hers to hold. She stepped down into the soft earth and followed the narrow path toward the open flats where horses grazed. Most of the camp had gone quiet, the kind of stillness that came in late summer when the land seemed to breathe inward. She found Hakan near the far edge of the meadow, brushing down his mare. He didn't look up right away. "I thought you might be by the ridge," she said. "The birds don't move in this rain. No reason to watch for what's already gone quiet." She walked closer, stopping beside the horse. "Mayani's telling them stories from when she and your mother were girls. I didn't want to interrupt. She doesn't tell those often." "That means she's chosen you. I've never been chosen before." He set the brush aside and ran his hand over the mare's damp neck. "The camp sees you, not just for what you do, but how you carry what's been done to you. I keep thinking of the first time I saw you, up on that ridge. You didn't speak like a man who expected anything." "I didn't. You looked like someone who'd already left everything behind." "I had, but I didn't know what to reach for." He turned, finally meeting her eyes. "You reached for the right thing." Beyond them, thunder rolled low. The mare shifted but settled as Hakan laid a steady hand on her flank. Aderyn bent to pick up the dropped curry comb, brushing mud from its edge. "There's no one left from my mother's family," she said. "No name I carry that ties me to anyone but my father. You don't need blood to belong. I know." She looked up at the gray sky. "But I want to be more than just allowed here. I want to be part of what's built, not just what's mended." He stepped closer, not touching her, but near enough that she felt the warmth of his presence. "Then build with me," her breath caught. "You mean I do?" His voice was low but certain, not out of debt, not out of rescue. "But because when I look at you, I see what hasn't broken, and I want to shape something with that." Aderyn folded her arms, not to shut him out but to hold herself steady. "I've never known a love that didn't come with chains." "Then this one won't," he said. "You'll walk beside me, not behind. And nothing you were made to suffer will define what we make." Lightning flickered beyond the hills and the mare tossed her head. Aderyn reached up, settling her with a soft word. Then she turned back to Hakan. "I'll build with you," she said, "but only if we shape it together, stone by stone." "Day by day," he nodded once. "That's the only way I know." By dusk, the rain had eased and the children came running to find them, Wessa with a carved stick he declared a sword, Toma already planning a shelter of branches for it to defend. Aderyn stood with them, Hakan at her side, as the last of the clouds broke apart and let the sun slip through. She didn't need rescue anymore. She had roots now. And a future that waited to be built, not bought. The wind carried a new sharpness that whispered of coming frost. Aderyn stood beside the smokehouse, tying bundles of dried herbs to the rafters while the last of the daylight slanted low across the prairie. Her braid hung heavy down her back, damp from stream water, her sleeves rolled and dust streaked from the day's work preparing winter stores. The camp moved steadily now, with purpose born of routine, the kind built not through instruction, but through shared rhythm. Hakan approached from the western trail, his gait easy, his rifle slung low across his shoulder. Aderyn caught the scent of pine on him before he spoke. "I found the tracks again," he said. "Just south of the ridge, deer this time." She set the last bundle in place and brushed her hands clean. "You'll take the boys out tomorrow," he nodded. "They need to learn the quiet of it, not just the aim." She stepped down onto the packed earth. "You're good with them. They remind me who I was before all the weight," he said. "You carry it well. I carry it better with you near." Aderyn glanced at the horizon, where clouds had begun to gather low and dark. "Have you thought more on what you'd build if you didn't have to carry anyone else?" He didn't answer right away. "I want a small place, near the high grass where the wind breaks on both sides, enough room for the children, and you if you wanted it." "I do," she said. "I've been thinking about that too." His brow lifted slightly. "You've already chosen the land, haven't you? There's a rise east of the old cottonwood where the soil's soft and the sun lingers longer. I walked it this morning." He shifted his weight, his voice low. "You want to start building before the first snow? If we wait, it'll be spring before we can drive a post." He studied her face, the firm line of her mouth, the quiet certainty in her eyes. "You're not just staying," he said. "You're planting your whole self here." I don't want to borrow a life, she said. I want to make one. With you, he stepped closer, the space between them closing with the ease of long-held trust. Then we'll start with the posts. I'll speak to the elders. They'll help us raise the walls. I already asked Mayani, she said. She's glad for it. That night by firelight, they drew the lines of their home in the dirt 4 walls, a hearth, space for the children, a place for drying herbs and storing grain. Nothing grand, just honest, enduring things. By mid-September, the walls stood waist-high. The men came in the mornings, bringing cedar poles and laughter. The women brought flatbread and advice. The children stacked kindling and chased each other between the beams. Aderyn pressed her own hand into the fresh clay beside the doorframe, a quiet mark of beginning. On the morning they laid the final timber across the top, the sky was pale and cloudless. Hakan stood on the roof beam, steadying the frame as Aderyn passed him the last length of rope. When I was a boy, he said, I used to dream of building a lodge high on a ridge where no one could touch it. And now, she asked, shielding her eyes, now I dream of this. She climbed the ladder and stood beside him. The wind tugged at her braid and set the prairie moving like waves. Below them, the camp bustled. Smoke rose from the cook fires and children's laughter drifted on the breeze. Aderyn looked at the view, then at the man who had become her home. She reached for his hand, fitting her fingers between his. I never thought I'd have a place that didn't feel borrowed. You don't, he said. You built this. No one can take it. They stood together as the sun climbed higher, warming the boards beneath their feet. That winter, snow came early. The walls of their home held firm. Inside, the hearth kept the cold at bay, and the scent of cedar bark mingled with dried mint and pine ash. Toma and Wessa slept close by, their breathing easy. Aderyn stitched by firelight, her needle moving through thick wool, while Hakan carved smooth handles for new tools. One evening, as snow fell soft against the window flap, Aderyn set aside her sewing and reached for the carved whistle that now hung beside the door. You never used it, she said. I didn't need to, he answered. You always came anyway. He crossed to her, kneeling so they sat level. I'd come even if the world ended between us. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. There's no world between us anymore. He kissed her then, quiet and sure, the kind of kiss given not in haste but in certainty. In spring, green returned to the hills and with it, new life. Aderyn rose one morning with a steadier breath and placed her hand low against her belly. She didn't speak, not yet. But when Hakan came in from the ridge, shaking dust from his shoulders, she met him in the doorway with a look that said all she needed. His hands came to rest gently on her hips, then moved to her cheeks. You're sure, she nodded. As sure as I've ever been. They didn't speak more of it then. They didn't need to. The world had already begun to change, years past, marked not by loss but by growth. The lodge expanded, 2 rooms became 4, a covered space for drying herbs added beside the hearth. Toma grew tall and learned to tan hides with Mayani. Wessa tracked better than any boy his age, quiet and sharp-eyed. And their youngest, a girl with her mother's steadiness and her father's calm, wore a string of carved beads Hakan had made the day she came into the world. Aderyn often stood at the doorway in the evenings, watching the sun slip behind the cottonwoods. She held a child on her hip, her hands calloused and strong, her heart full in a way she'd never imagined possible in the days when she'd run, wild and desperate, with only a horse and a name. Hakan would come up behind her, his arm slipping around her waist, his lips brushing the curve of her temple. Still not tired of it, he'd ask. Never, she'd say, and she never was, because they had built something true, not out of rescue, not out of need. But from the deep, quiet knowing that they were no longer alone, and never would be again.